Alright, so I'm going to do some extra review to prepare for your upcoming quiz. Alright, so it's going to be one-step and two-step equations. Alright, so you should be able to recognize what's a one-step and a two-step equation. Alright, one step, it's in its name. Right? If you're looking at an equation and you're trying to isolate a variable, how many steps do you need in order to do that? Right, so these first 10 questions are going to be all one-step equations. And with one-step equations, you want to do the inverse operation, right? Because you want to isolate the variable. Right? You want to isolate the variable. Right? And if you remember, if your operation is addition, the inverse is subtraction, right? If your operation is subtraction, the inverse is addition. Right, same thing with multiplication and division. The inverse of multiplication is division. The inverse of division is multiplication. Right, so let's give these problems a try. All right, so this first one, I have 10 plus n equals -4. The variable that you want to isolate here is the n. Right, so to isolate your n, you have to see on this side of the equal sign, what's around this n? There is a 10 plus. Right, this 10 is being added to the n. Right, and it's a positive 10, so to get rid of a positive 10, we want to subtract, right? It's a -10. Right, so we do -10 on both sides, and then 10 minus 10 is 0. Right, so if it's 0, it goes away completely, right? The identity property of addition is 0 plus anything is itself. So we get n equals -4 minus 10. Right, and then when they have the same sign, you can add them and you keep the sign, right? So -14 is your answer here. All right, now let's look at this one here. Our variable that we want to isolate is v, right? And on this side of the equal sign, we have v minus 7. So to get rid of something that's being subtracted, you want to add, right? So the opposite of -7 is +7. Right, so add 7 on both sides, right? Cancel the 7, because -7 plus 7 is 0. And again, 0 plus anything is itself, right? So we get v equals 12 plus 7. So v equals 19. All right, and just keeping this going, I have r on the right-hand side of the equal sign. All right, so this is the variable that we want to isolate. And on the side of the equal sign, we have r minus 8. Right, the 8 is being subtracted. The inverse of subtraction is addition, so let's add 8 on both sides. Right, so -8 plus 8 is 0, as always. So then we get r is -16 plus 8. And then when they have the opposite signs, you can subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Right, so we get -8 here. Right, 16 minus 8 is 8, and the 16 is bigger, and it's negative. Right, so we keep it. Right, and in this case, it doesn't matter if you write -8 equals r, or you can write r equals -8, right? That's the same thing. Right, I don't care which side of the equal sign it's on. All right. And now looking at this one, same thing, right? I have n minus 4. Our variable that we want to isolate is an n. Right, so then to get rid of something that's being subtracted, we want to add the same thing on both sides. Right, and the reason we're adding the same thing on both sides is because you can think of it like a balance, or like a scale, right? So if n minus 4 is equal to -13, right, if I add 4 on both sides, or if I add 4 on just this side, right, it's no longer equal, right? This has more stuff on it, so it's like, if you think of like a scale, right, so like a scale like that, right, if you add 4, it's going to bring it down, right, and then this side's going to go up. Right, so we want to add 4 on this side to keep it completely level. Right, so adding the same thing on both sides doesn't change your solution. Right, so we get n equals -13 plus 4. Again, opposite signs. You want to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. All right. And I'll skip some of these addition ones. Let's try some multiplication and division. Right, there's not that many on here, but we can give one a try. Right, so something like number 9 is a little bit different from all the others. Right, so for number 9, if I have 77 equals 11m, remember that 11m is the same as 11 times m, right? The 11 and the m are being multiplied. All right, and then now you want to think, what's the inverse operation to multiplication? Right, it's going to be division. Right? The inverse of multiplication is division. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the 11 on both sides because, again, we want to isolate our variable m. Right, but right now it's not isolated. We have an 11 right in front of it. Right, so divide 11 on both sides, and then 11 divided by 11 is 1. Right, so it goes away. 1 times anything is itself, right? This is our identity property of multiplication, right? 1 times anything is itself. So then we can divide 11 on both sides. Then we get 77 divided by 11 gives you 7 equals m. And there's your answer. All right, and we can do the same thing with something that's being divided. Remember that this r over 4 is the same as r divided by 4. Right, so to get rid of something that's being divided, you want to do the inverse of division, which is multiplication. R is our variable that we want to isolate, and the inverse of division is multiplication, so we want to multiply 4 on both sides. And then again, 4 divided by 4 is 1, so we don't have to write it. So then we get r equals negative 10 times 4, which is negative 40. All right, so now let's try some two-step equations, right? So the remainder of this is going to be all two-step equations. All right, now with two-step equations, it's essentially the same concepts, right? You still want to isolate the variable, but in this case, to isolate the variable, you want to do your order of operations backwards. Right, because we want to undo the equation that we want to undo the equation so that we have the variable by itself. Right, so if you look at something like number 11, right, the variable right now is not by itself. So we want to undo the equation. Right, we say order of operations backwards, so we want to take care of any addition and subtraction. Right, but for something like this one, and I'll see there, I think there's another one like it here, so then I'll do that one as well. All right, so something like number 11, maybe you remember to do order of operations backwards and you want to do addition and subtraction, and so you maybe want to take care of this 10. But keep in mind, this 2 on the bottom is not being divided, or is not dividing just the x, it's dividing the 10 plus the x, right? So it's dividing this entire statement right here. So that's the first thing we want to get rid of, right? This divided by 2 right here. And the opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2, right? The inverse operation. All right, so then 2 divided by 2 goes away, and then we get 2 times negative 5 is negative 10, and this equals 10 plus x. All right, so now it's kind of free right now, right? We kind of freed it from this 2 on the bottom, right, by multiplying by that 2. So now we can isolate the variable further, right, and subtract 10 on both sides. Right, and then 10 minus 10 goes away, and then we get negative 10 minus 10. They're the same sign, so we want to add them and keep the sign. Right, so negative 20 is our answer here. All right, and if you're ever unsure, you can always check your answer. So you can check by plugging it in. You want to plug in x equals negative 20. So we want to do negative 5 equals 10 plus negative 20 over 2, and then see if we get the same answer. Right, and then 10 plus negative 20 is negative 10. Divided by 2, you get negative 5. Okay, so it works. All right, so now I want to try another one like that. Actually, I want to try another one that's not similar to that. So let's jump to number 20 right here. We see 5 equals 9 plus a divided by 3, right? In this case, the 3 is only dividing the a. It's not dividing the 9 plus the a, right? So in this case, we do want to do order of operations backwards, and we want to start by subtracting this 9, right? I see a positive 9 on this side with the a. I want to isolate the a, so let's subtract 9 on both sides. And then we get 5 minus 9 is negative 4. And then 9 minus 9 goes away completely. Alright, and then now we have a divided by 3 equals negative 4. Alright, so then to get rid of this 3 on the bottom, we want to multiply by 3. Right, to get rid of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. Right, and then the 3 and the 3 go away, you can cross it out. And then you get 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And then that's your answer. Alright, so notice the difference between this problem and the one that we just did. Right, so we can't multiply the 3 on this equation first because it is not dividing the entire expression. Right, it is just dividing the a. Right, so that's why we subtract the 9 first to get negative 12 equals a. Right, but let's try another one like number 11 right here. Right, so something like number 16. Right, now this is one where we do have to multiply the 4 first because the 4 is dividing this entire expression up here. So n plus 8, the entire thing is being divided by 4. So we want to multiply by 4 on both sides. Right, so multiply by 4 to get rid of the 4 on the bottom. And then now that the 4's are gone, we get n plus 8 equals negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Alright, and then the last thing we want to do is get rid of this positive 8 by subtracting 8 on both sides. Alright, and then n minus 8, 8 minus 8 is 0, so we get n equals negative 8 minus 8. They have the same sign, so we want to add them and keep the sign. Alright. Okay, very good. Alright, so those are some important examples. They maybe cause a little bit of confusion. Right, but recognizing the difference is going to be what saves you with some of these problems. Right, so recognizing the difference between something like this and something like this that we just did. Alright, so then let's just keep going with this worksheet. Alright, so again, we want to do order of operations backwards. So PEMDAS backwards. Right, so look at number 12. We want to get rid of any addition and subtraction first. Right, on the side with the equal sign, we have a k. We have a 7k minus 28. Right, so the opposite of minus 28 is plus 28. Right, that's the first thing we want to get rid of. Alright. And then negative 28 plus 28 is 0, so it goes away. Then we're left with 7k equals, and then negative 126 plus 28. Right, they have different signs, so we want to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Right, so 126 minus 28 is going to get you negative 98. Right, negative because the 126 is bigger. So then we get 7k equals negative 98. Alright, and then now, to get rid of the 7 in front of the k, remember 7k means 7 times k, so we want to divide by 7 on both sides. Alright, and now that the 7's are gone, we get k equals negative 98 divided by 7. Right, as always, if you can't do this in your head, right, you can always write it off to the side. Right, so you could do 7 divided by 98, and then 7 goes into 9 one time. Alright, so we get 2, we bring down the 8, and then 7 goes into 28 4 times. Alright, so then k equals 14, but remember, negative divided by a positive is negative. Right, so you get k equals negative 14. Alright. Alright, now let's try number 13. Right, similar story here. Right, we want to do PEMDAS backwards. Right, do we see any addition and subtraction here? We do, right? We see a plus 6 on the side with the n. Right, so to get rid of a plus 6, we want to subtract 6. Right, minus 6 minus 6. And now 6 minus 6 goes away, so we get negative 3n equals 54 minus 6 should get you 48. And then divide by negative 3 on both sides. Common mistake I see is if you see a negative 3, you maybe want to add the 3 on both sides, right? Remember, this negative 3 is being multiplied by the n. You're looking at what's in between your number and your variable, right? There's nothing, so it's multiplying. So you're dividing by negative 3 on both sides. All right, so then we get n equals 48 divided by negative 3. Again, you can do that off to the side. All right, should get you 16. All right, so it should get you 16. And then 48 divided by negative 3, positive divided by negative is negative, so we get a negative 16 as our answer. All right, now let's try it. 10n minus 7 equals negative 117. All right, again, PEMDAS backwards. With two-step equations, it's always PEMDAS backwards. All right, so do we see any addition and subtraction with this on the side with the n? We do, right? We see a minus 7, so we want to add 7 on both sides. So the negative 7 plus 7 goes away. We get 10n equals negative 117 plus 7 is going to be negative 110. Right, they have opposite signs, so we want to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. All right, and then now we have a 10 times n. All right, 10n is the same as 10 times n, don't forget that. So then to get rid of multiplication is division, right? So we want to divide by 10 on both sides. And then 110 divided by 10 is going to be 11, but it's a negative divided by a positive, so we get negative 11. All right. Let's keep going here. Again, PEMDAS backwards. Any addition and subtraction? All right. We should see this negative 6, right, is being added to the 3r. Remember, this 3 is being multiplied by the r, so we can't do anything about that yet. Right, we have to take care of this negative 6 first, right? This negative 6 doesn't have a variable, right? So we want to get rid of that first. And then the opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6, so we want to add 6 on both sides. All right, so then negative 6 plus 6 goes away, so then they get 3r equals negative 27 plus 6. They have opposite signs, so we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Right, so 27 minus 6 is 21, and then 27 is negative, so we want to keep the negative, right? So negative 21. All right, and then like I mentioned before, this 3r is the same as 3 times r, right? So we want to divide by 3 on both sides. And then 3 divided by 3 is 1, it goes away. So then we get r equals negative 21 divided by 3 is negative 7. And then I can quickly go over the last few, right? So let's just keep this going, right? So again, order of operations backwards, we want to subtract 18 on both sides, right? We see a positive 18, so we want to subtract. All right, so then 18 minus 18 is 0, it goes away. And then 114 minus 18, right? Again, you can do that off to the side, but it should get you 96. And then this equals negative 6n. All right, and then this negative 6 in front of this n means negative 6 times n. So let's divide by negative 6 on both sides. Looks like my pen is glitching, so bear with me, please. All right, so negative 6 divided by negative 6 goes away. All right, so then we get n on that side. And then 96 divided by 6, again, do that off to the side if you need. All right, so then should go into 9 one time. And then it goes into 36 6 times. All right, so then it should get you 16, but positive divided by negative is negative. Right, so we should get n as negative 16. All right. Same thing here, right? Negative 16 minus 4x, we want to isolate the x. All right, so then to get rid of that negative 16, right, we want to do that first because that's the constant that doesn't have the variable, right? That's the addition and subtraction. So to get rid of a negative 16, we want to add 16 on both sides. All right, and this should get you negative 28, I believe, equals negative 4x. All right, and then you want to divide both sides by negative 4. All right, and then negative 4 divided by negative 4 goes away. And then 28 divided by 4 is 7, and then negative divided by negative is positive, so we can keep it positive. So you get 7 equals x. All right, and then the last one I'm doing with you guys is this one, 56 minus 8x equals negative 48. All right, so as always, take care of any addition and subtraction first, right? We want to do order of operations backwards. We're trying to undo this equation. All right, so minus 56 minus 56. All right, that cancels out. And then we're left with negative 8x equals negative 48 minus 56. They have the same sign, so we can add them and keep the sign. All right, so this should get you 104 negative, right, because they're both negative. All right, and then divide both sides by negative 8. All right. And then I can't do that off the top of my head, so let's write it off to the side. All right, goes into 10 one time, and then goes into 24 3 times. So then we get x equals 104 divided by 8 is going to be 13, and since they're both negative, we keep it positive. All right, so we get x equals 13. All right, I hope this was helpful. Feel free to reach out for any questions. All right, take care.